Okay, on today's podcast, we are joined by Mr. Mike Banna, Dr. Mike II of Instagram fame, the social media mogul that he is. Welcome, Mike, to the podcast.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very flattering introduction and mostly untrue.
I'm sure it will be to the contrary when we go through all of our questions. You will kind of surface as the new social media man for Instagram and nutrition stuff around the world.
I think that's what social media is about. It's about looking like you are something rather than actually being that something.
Make it till you make it, right?
It's 2020
yeah,
exactly. Just tell everyone that's what I am, and then that's what makes you that.
Yeah, so that whole Wayne's World thing, if you book it, they will come.
Exactly.
So, if you believe it, they will believe it. Cool. So we've got Mike on the podcast to talk about a number of different things. We're going to kind of meander through a couple of different topics. We're going to talk about Mike's own weight loss transformation. He's a GP as well, so we're going to dive into some questions around that. We're going to dive into social media. And I think Mike's gift to the world of Instagram so far is the ability to make good lists of everyday things. So we are going to delve into some good lists.
What a useful skill.
I find it a powerful skill. Everybody loves a list, whether they like it or not. Everybody loves a list.
I like a list.
Because, it comes up in whether it's like the pub conversations or whatever it is. You ask a question about a list, everyone's got an opinion.
It's a good icebreaker.
But I feel you're kind of the mediator. You're the one with the answer. When everyone's having the debate, who settles the debate on, the best, whatever it may be, the best cake out there? I don't know. The best muffin, the best chocolate bar, which is clearly a double decker.
I'm the decider.
Yeah, you are the decider. But
we'll get on to that. We should podcast every day. This feels good. I like it.
Well, I do a podcast every day, so it would take the pressure off me to think of topics and content. But enough of that. We'll do that later. Anyway, so we've done a little bit of an intro for you, but maybe you can kind of give people listening who haven't come across you on Instagram, haven't come across your list capability, what's kind of your background and kind of what do you do on an everyday basis apart from post incredibly important stuff on social media?
Oh gosh. Well, I am a person who basically I hate doing this. It's so embarrassing.
I am
a human being. I am a GP. I live in West Sussex, and I went on a bit of a lifestyle change journey. I hate calling it a journey, but that's kind of what it was. And on this journey, I noticed that I didn't know very much about things like nutrition and exercise and training and all of these sorts of things. I grew up very inactive, very disinterested in things like that. And I learned lots. And by learning lots, I realized that I didn't know anything. And by realizing that I didn't know anything, I also realized that lots of other people might not know anything either. And it might be useful for somebody who had tried really hard to learn these things to help spread a bit of that information as well. So I suppose that the social media thing came a bit from that, and a bit from accountability and trying to do it in the first place. And it's always just been a bit of fun, really. But also, I suppose in the last couple of years, it's taken a bit of an educational twist from time to time. I often feel it's possibly not quite educational enough. There's still plenty of just pictures of food. But it's, that's a terrible description of me and what I do. But that's it really, I guess.
I think we got a good crux of it, and we'll delve into some of all of that, various different bits and pieces as we go. Now, you mentioned there that you've been on your own sort of lifestyle transformation, weight loss journey, other cliched random hashtag that is used on Instagram that everybody hates, but everyone's come to know and love it. In equal measures.
Yeah.
So when did that kind of process begin for you? When did you start to think about, okay, right, I want to try and lose weight? And what kind of prompted you to say, okay, right, now I've got to really take this seriously and kind of put my all into it?
I guess I'd always wanted to lose weight. I had always been a bit overweight growing up. And I did that classic thing that I think happens to a lot of people, where you think you're much more overweight than you actually are. and then you become more overweight and you look back at old pictures of yourself and you think, oh, actually, I wasn't that bad then when I was really whingy about being overweight, but actually now I am. And it's kind of, I suppose, like one of those things that you almost speak into existence a little bit. Sometimes, like you identify with that identity, and then you kind of let it happen more and more. I think for me, I had so little involvement with things like organized exercise that when I was at university, I went to university in London. And so I walked everywhere because I didn't want to spend money on transport. And through doing that and through working in hospitals and things, I was quite active without making any effort to. But as soon as I went into GP land, that was immediately removed from my life. Like I had to drive to work because it was far away. And also I needed a car to do home visits and things like that. So I drove to work, sat at a desk all day, drove home. And I think that's probably when things started to get a bit more out of control. And there were a few things that happened. And I hesitate to say the reason that I decided to change, because I never didn't decide to change. I'd always wanted to. But it was just that it worked this time. And it was a bit of a perfect storm, I suppose. A few things happened, like some friends of mine had some health scares and things. And I was getting to the point where I realized that without some genuine, purposeful intervention in what was happening, I was going to start to have actual health problems rather than just being a bit unhappy with my weight. I have actual health problems at the moment, actually. I've got a terrible cold, so I'm really sorry for this constant throat clearing.
Okay.
But yeah, so it was a bit of a perfect storm of enough motivation and then being on social media and having some level of accountability and support, which is something that we hadn't really seen before. So I had a lot of friends who were quite outdoorsy and who liked doing exercise, but I didn't really like doing any of the type of exercise that they liked doing, like cycling and things. So I wanted to go to the gym, but I didn't really have friends that wanted to go to the gym. So I had this little kind of support network on social media of people who would, if I would go, oh, I'm not going to the gym today, people go, no, go to the gym. And it was quite cool. I had someone that helped me with my diet and all of that stuff as well. So it was excellent.
Excellent. And so obviously as a GP, were you more, were you always conscious about your health, your weight and things like that? Was it something that was always sort of on your mind as something that you wanted to kind of sort out, but maybe stresses of being a GP, being very busy and things like that, it kind of always sit by the wayside? Was it always something that you were conscious of, or did it creep up on you and say, shit?
I always felt a little bit uncomfortable when I was trying to give people lifestyle advice in that sort of situation. And I don't think that's something that doctors should feel uncomfortable about, actually. And it's something I feel quite strongly about. You sort of hear a lot of things about, oh, people should be setting a good example. I think actually in any case, I think we are all humans. We've all got our own struggles, and you don't have to have amazing hair to be a hairdresser. You don't have to have loads of money to be an accountant. It's just that you have a skill. It doesn't mean that you have to be that person. And I think it's hard enough to do a job that is so all consuming without also feeling a pressure to be in a certain shape and stuff like that. But I don't think that's much of an issue, thankfully. But it did just make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. I felt like I wanted to be able to, to walk the walk, I suppose. But at the same time, in a weird kind of paradox, it was more comfortable talking to patients about weight when I was really overweight, because then it was seen as far less judgmental, because I clearly had the same sort of struggles that they might have been going through, or not necessarily, but I at least appeared to. So I don't know, it's such a complex issue, and everybody has their own story when it comes to that. So it's quite difficult to generalize, but I think for me, it was something that I always had a consciousness of, but I had that youthful invincibility that we all have when we're adolescents and kind of first growing up. And then you get to your 20s and 30s and you realize, well, actually, I probably need to start thinking about taking a bit more care of myself.
Yeah. And nearly 40 in my case, which is a worrisome thought.
No comment. Also in my case.
And interesting, like for me, like what an interesting thing would be to understand in terms of when you're dealing with, say, patients on a daily basis. Do you feel like that you've changed in the way that you talk about weight and weight management with your patients now versus when you were slightly heavier? Has your mindset and approach of maybe empathy or anything like that changed in how you deal and approach those subjects with patients?
I'm probably more annoying now because I think it's very easy to slip into that thinking you know everything because you've done it.
Sure.
And I've definitely been there. And that's something that, like when I did paleo for a while and I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, it was like, I think we're always guided as clinicians by personal experience, whether it's with other patients or with ourselves. And it's always really important to balance, anecdotal experience with actual evidence base and all of that sort of stuff. And when your training in things like nutrition and stuff is somewhat limited, and you think that world is much more simpler than it actually is, as lots of medical professionals I think do, it's very easy to kind of to simplify it a bit too much, or to not realize that what works for one person isn't going to necessarily work for somebody else.
And you just touched on one thing there, in the sense that I think there is this sort of narrative in the nutritional world, certainly something that I've heard in sort of through my education on the nutrition side of things, is that sometimes GPs and other medical professionals maybe don't get a large amount of training when it comes to nutrition specifics. And I guess when a GP or whoever is giving advice to a patient about nutrition, they're doing so from a point of view they want to help. No GP is doing it out of, they're not, I assume, not trying to sell diets and supplements and things like that. They're doing it out of genuinely wanting to help that particular patient, but maybe they're not at the forefront of nutrition and what's right or wrong. Is that the case, that the education and the training side for GPs on a nutrition side is quite limited, or is that actually not the case, and GPs are not given fair credit for the amount that they do know?
No, it's absolutely the case. It's I think fortunately things are changing, but I think historically, I mean, there's a certain amount of training on kind of the physiology of certain bits of nutrition, for example. But in terms of nutrition as a whole, in terms of things like diet, I think it's traditionally very, very minimally taught at medical school. And I suppose the thing is as well, when you're doing your GP training and you're kind of going around the different specialties in the hospitals, you've got dietitians and things in the hospitals who deal with the diet side of things. And most of what you do in the hospital is based around treating kind of acute illness, people who are inpatients and things like that. So when you get to general practice, getting a really good idea on how to manage all of the lifestyle related things can be tricky, because it's a real focus shift. And it's genuinely a real challenge. And I think the difficulty with it is that in a 10-minute GP appointment, it's very difficult to have a meaningful nutritional consultation anyway. So even if you knew everything there was to know about nutrition, it's still not necessarily the right place for that education and for that kind of clinical situation to take place. What you need more really is kind of time and the right kind of people and a bit more of a multidisciplinary approach. But I think the reality is we have an NHS that is for the most part free. And so if you've got a problem with something, you are more likely to book an appointment to see your GP to talk about it than you are to book a consultation with a private dietitian or something like that. Sure. And if you want a referral to an NHS dietitian, it's generally going to be because you've got a specific problem that needs solving, rather than you just want to improve your situation. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense, because when I think about it in the context of what I do, like you said, I'm spending a lot more than 10 minutes with clients that I work with, on an individual basis. It might be a call that lasts half an hour in one specific session. It will be multiple touch points over email during the week. It will be interactions in Facebook groups and lots of different messages and things like that flying about the place over the course of an entire week. It's not trying to confine all of the information that they need in 10 minutes and expecting them to for you to be able to give the right information or all of the information in 10 minutes and then be able to take it on board, understand it, and be able to apply it after 10 minutes of discussion. It's kind of like you say, it's almost like the wrong forum to be trying to have those real in-depth conversations. So it makes absolute perfect sense.
And I think nutrition needs a certain level of coaching, to really kind of get through to somebody and figure out why they need to change their nutrition and how they need to change it. There's so much information around it.
That's one thing that I think is fundamentally changed about the way that I coach people from when I first started to now. Is I used to think, when I got into training and nutrition, that I was just going to work with dudes that wanted to get jacked in the gym, and we were going to talk about muscle and protein and things like that. But then I got bored of that very, very quickly, just, talking about those sorts of things. And what really kind of got me passionate about nutrition and about, training and things like that was helping people that didn't really understand very much at all, and watching them develop and change over the course of a period of time. That's more rewarding for me to see that big change in how someone approaches it. And you realize that, yes, you need to know about your calories, your macros, you need to know about nutrition, all these sorts of things, all very, very important. But the thing that has come to the forefront of the way I coach people now is habits, lifestyle change. It's all of those underlying component parts of how do you adhere? How do you make this stick for the long term? How do you make sure that you're not, worried about what you eat every 5 minutes and things like that? It's those sorts of things that I think come to the forefront when you're looking at coaching someone over a longer period of time. It's less about, you can talk to people on social media or whatever and say, oh, how do I lose weight? Yeah, it's calorie deficit. Okay, get on with it. But that's just like Instagram, I think, is great for various different things, but the piece of advice you give can only be very generic. You can never really go into, right, this is how, the amount of time that I would spend with the client is hours. I can't do that in one post. You're just giving, not necessarily, you don't want to necessarily give sound bites because that's a bit cheesy and a bit crappy, but you're trying to give, here's the general principles to go follow, which is sometimes it's good enough for some people. Sometimes the other half of people, it's not good enough. So you get caught in that sort of the middle ground all the time. So maybe like an Instagram post is like my GP consultation of, I've got 3 minutes of your time to try and give you some information. Here's the bare bones, but are you going to be able to go out and, apply it all? Some people will, some people won't. I guess you're in that situation. Cool. That's a long-winded answer from me about a question you didn't even ask.
But I think it's massively relevant to the situation, and I think that's the thing, is that a lot of what we do is about context, and there is a difference between a GP consultation, a nutritional consultation, a personal training session, and all of these things help people in different ways. And I think that sometimes people don't always realize that there are a lot of different ways of seeking help when it comes to these sorts of issues. And I think that's what we've kind of lost a little bit over the years. And, people don't necessarily speak to family members, extended family, friends who've been through similar sorts of issues. They go straight for things like GPs, and it can sometimes result in not necessarily the optimal way of finding help.
And my own sort of personal experience with my own family is that my family obviously know what I do for a living, and the education that I've got to do that. But my dad got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. So we had a bit of a conversation about how weight management could be really beneficial for him, focusing on what he eats. And then he went to the GP, told him a little bit of other stuff that wasn't quite the same as what I said. I said, well, the GP said this. So, you know what, son, you know, I tried to have a little bit of a conversation. Maybe he's not had like real in-depth nutrition conversation or nutrition training, but you do what you want, Dad. And that's one thing I've definitely learned is, you know, don't give your family members nutrition advice unless they ask for it. Otherwise,
or anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Or anyone.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's flip back to your own story. So you've gone through this process of, you know, trying to lose weight and things like that. So kind of what were those challenges, those big challenges that you faced early on? You know, were they expected, unexpected? Kind of how did you kind of go through some of those challenges and overcome them?
Oh, wow. I mean, I suppose the biggest challenge for me was that socially, my social life was constructed entirely around eating and drinking. And so being on a diet was quite restrictive in itself in terms of what I felt I could and couldn't do. And I had to learn a lot of ways around that. Unfortunately, I took a very pragmatic approach to it, in the sense that I could have felt like, oh, it's so sad that I can't do X, Y, or Z. I looked at it much more of a, why do I need to drink wine at a wine tasting? That's ridiculous. I know it seems insane when we talk about it like that, but I genuinely went to wine tastings and drank Diet Coke because I was like, I'm not in this to ruin my life. I'm in it to improve it. And so I don't want to not go to a wine tasting because I'm on a diet, but I also don't want to derail my goals because I'm going to a wine tasting. And not that you could, you know, not that you need to not drink wine at a wine tasting, but like, so let's say, for example, if I'm going to go out 3 or 4 times a week, they can't all be wine tastings and dinners out and all of those sorts of things. So I very much modified what I was doing. So I would say, well, actually, I'm going to this event because I want to socialize with my friends and spend time with people who I care about. I don't want to not do that because I'm not eating. So, you know, I have a lot of mixed views about this sort of thing, because I think we see a lot of stuff, particularly now on Instagram, about, oh, well, you know, you should just eat the donut. You should just do this. You should just, it's okay. Of course it's okay. Everything's okay, but it might not be okay 12 times a week. And actually, I think that sometimes if someone says, oh, he went to a wine tasting and he drank Diet Coke, that's so weird. Like he's taking himself out of these social situations. He's not letting himself enjoy life. My point is, why do I need a wine tasting to enjoy life? What is the actual bit of that is enjoyable to me? If it is purely the wine, then maybe that's a problem in itself. If it's purely the food, maybe that's a problem in itself. Or if I'm going there to be sociable, why do I need the wine or the food to do that? And yeah, mixed results.
So I would. It's a very valid point, because when you think about, you know, let's take that specific situation where you're going for a wine tasting. The real reason why you're going wine tasting is to be with friends that you enjoy, you like, and you want to spend time with them. It just so happens that on this occasion, you've all decided to go wine tasting.
Yeah.
It wasn't like the wine tasting is, you know, oh my God, this is the thing that we've been wanting to do for 10 years. We just like spending time together as this group of friends.
Yeah.
So therefore, if one or two of you wants to do something slightly different, you're still actually there for what the purpose of the event was, which was to spend time with people. It's not like you've shut yourself away and said, I'm just going to sit in my bedroom with the lights off and, you know, worry about what I'm not eating.
I think it would be much sadder to not go to the wine tasting because you're not drinking wine. And also, like, to just clarify, because I think as well, I mean, so my transformative process lasted about 6 years. So I went through a lot of different ways of doing things in that 6 years. So I certainly didn't do that all the time. But so when I did that was because I did one of those kind of photo shoot challenges things. And so I was on a very strict diet for a period of, I think it was actually 20 weeks in the end. And it was because I was trying to prove to myself that I was capable of doing something that I never felt capable of doing. And actually, I think that the power of proving to yourself that you're capable of doing something that involves a little bit of sacrifice can be quite powerful. And I think as long as I think what's so difficult about it is even when I'm saying this out loud, I don't particularly want to promote that way of thinking to other people, because I think it depends so much on your original mindset and where your brain is at in the first place. Because for some people, that could be justification for quite disordered eating or even an eating disorder. And that's not where I'm going with it, obviously. And I think it's becoming ever important to caveat these sorts of discussions with that. But I think what we struggle with a little bit, especially in the world of social media, is that we are constantly putting out these universal messages to everybody. And actually, there isn't really a universal message, because for some people, it could genuinely be really damaging to refuse to go to a wine tasting, or refuse to be at a wine tasting and not drink wine, etc. For some people, it could be the opposite. For some people, and I think what my point was for me is that I was determined to make it not an issue, to make myself not have issues about it, so that I was always doing what I wanted, regardless of what I was eating or not eating, as the case may be. I didn't want to be a slave to the fact that I was on a diet. And I suppose some people could argue still that I was being a slave to the fact that I was on a diet, because I wasn't drinking wine. But I was drinking Diet Coke and coffee, and I really like Diet Coke and coffee. So actually, in my head, it wasn't so much of a big deal,
Yeah, and I think like what we said earlier about context is hugely important. So someone in a completely different scenario plonked into that wine tasting environment, like you said, it might be better for them to be involved, not feel like they have to restrict, and all those different sorts of things. It comes down to context, and it comes down to, like you say, social media. You can put a post and it will mean something to lots of people, and it'll be the right message to a lot of people, but you can't make one post with 2,200 characters that appeals to 7+ billion people all across the world. It's just never going to happen.
Exactly.
So I think understanding that context of where you can apply the situation, and like one question I had for you is in terms of your social environment, something that I get asked a lot by clients is when they are in not necessarily the exact same situation, but let's say something similar, business meeting or going out with friends for dinner, drinks, whatever. If they choose in a positive way to say, I know I can drink if I want to, I know I can eat if I want to, but right now I'm just going to choose not to, because it doesn't suit my goals to do that. And they're making that conscious decision that it's not good, not bad. They're just doing it for what they want to do. But they have a lot of social pressure and comments from other people. You can imagine what they're saying as, why can't it's just one drink, or why don't you do this, or why don't you do that? Did you have any of that to deal with, or your friends just quite supportive?
My friends are massively supportive, and my family was massively supportive, and I couldn't be more grateful for the amount of help that I had from everybody. But at the same time, I went for many years being the opposite. I was the one who nobody else wanted dessert. I had to have dessert. And it's really interesting when that changes to become the other way around. And so it's perfectly socially acceptable for everybody else I know to go, oh no, I'm not hungry anymore, I don't want dessert. They all do it. Nobody ever says anything. But when I do it, oh yeah, you're on a diet. And it's like, well, no, I want to be able to just not do it because I don't want to. I don't want it to be a thing necessarily. But I don't know. I mean, the thing is, everybody means so well when it comes to everything. But I think it's very, very easy also to feel like, I think it depends how sensitive you are about it as well. Like there have been times when somebody will make a comment like that, and I'll be really snappy and irritable about it. And then I think, well, they were just saying it because it's kind of true. Like, you could just have a piece of cake. It's not going to make a difference. But I know that's not what I want at that moment. And it's easier and faster to say, no, can't have that, than it is to go, actually, I could have that if I wanted to, but I have chosen on today that it's not in line with my goals, etc. So, like, actually, sometimes I would just be like, yeah, no, I can't have it. Or I would almost play up to a bit. I'd be like, yeah, I really want it, but I can't. And I would just be like extra whingy about it. But again, I think it's just about things not actually being a big deal. And the bigger deal you make of it, the worse it feels, I think. Like if you feel you're really restricting yourself when it comes to something, then I think it will always feel worse to do it. Like when I did paleo and I wasn't allowed to eat any cake, it was the saddest thing in the world because I wasn't allowed it. So it was all I wanted. And then when I went sort of towards a more flexible approach, actually, no, I still wanted to eat cake all the time. So that's not really a very good example, but yeah, it became less of an issue. And it was, I think it is, I don't know. I think it's really difficult to have full insight into your own reasons for doing things, why you do things, and whether it's quote unquote normal. What's normal? Who's normal? Nobody behaves normally. Food behavior isn't particularly normal behavior for most people. I mean, look at Christmas. Look what we've all just done for like 2 weeks. Look at the amount of like chocolate everyone's eaten. That's not really normal. We didn't need to do that, but we enjoy it. And it's part of this social construct that we've decided is completely acceptable and normal to do. So what becomes normal and acceptable is just what people decide is normal and acceptable, not necessarily what is actually conducive to your happiness or your health.
Yeah. And I think like from my own personal experience, it's, I guess, one to do with the social sort of construct you have in terms of your friends and things like that, and what their sort of perceptions and behaviors are about dieting or drinking or whatever it is that the activity is, but also your own sort of mindset and approach. So for me, I don't drink at all. I don't drink. And
not even gin?
No.
Gosh.
Water and coffee.
Okay. I like those things.
There you go. But that's my friends are fine with it, but initially it was quite a weird thing. And going into, like, when I was in the corporate world, going into business meetings and things like that, I had a very, very awkward dinner in China with the Chinese government. Sat there in this very palatial, gold everywhere, sat next to the head of the local government, and they're all doing the rice wine cheers every 5 seconds. And I was like, sorry, mate, I don't drink. And trying to get that message across when they're all speaking Chinese is very, very difficult. So I've had a lot of situations like that where people kind of just almost want to force you to drink, when actually, you know what? I know I can have one if I want one. I just don't want it. I don't miss it. Never really a big fan of the taste. I don't like a hangover.
And yet, funny, nobody forces pregnant women or people who are driving to drink.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like it's totally acceptable in certain situations. And also, I think what's really interesting, because I barely drank at all through medical school, and I think it was again this sense of slight rebelliousness, that it was what everybody did and it was what everybody tried to make me do, and therefore I didn't want to do it. And it's almost sometimes it was really difficult to explain to people that I didn't want to drink, rather than I can't drink or I mustn't drink or that this I just don't really want to. Oh, that's really weird. So, well, I think it's weird that you don't like chocolate, but
and this is that. I mean, my listeners. So if you're listening to this because you're a fan of Mike rather than me, then you'll be new to this. But my regular listeners,
those people don't exist. But that's really kind of you to say. Thank you.
But my listeners will be very, very familiar with me talking about Tinder. So I literally have had multiple like conversations that end up going nowhere because you have the conversation that you don't drink, and people. I'm not saying this is just women. This is obviously because I'm only talking to women on Tinder. I'm sure there's other men that feel the same way. But the amount of people who just think that's so socially strange that that's then end a chat. That's it. Yeah. Because, and then I say, it's like, well, are you saying that, you know, I'm not necessarily less of a person, but we can't get on because I don't drink a specific liquid. And these are the sort of things that I think about when people are, under pressure about, you're not having cake, so you're a little bit weird, or you're not having this, so you're a little bit weird. It's like, it's just food.
I think it's
drink.
It's ubiquitous, really, is that we like people to do the same things that we do. I mean, all you need to do is go on Instagram and say that you don't like ketchup, and see how livid people can become. And sometimes that's almost exactly, but that's sometimes almost like it's really difficult to get across to people that I don't mind if you don't think this is the best protein bar. Like, it's okay if you don't like it, you don't have to eat it. I think it's the best protein bar, and therefore it is the best protein bar because it's my mouth that I'm putting it in, not yours.
That would be strange.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the thing, is that it's like, it's the whole tribes thing. People like to feel that they are part of the same thing, and it's, we see it with veganism, we see it with CrossFit, we see it with all these sorts of things. People love to have things in common with people, and if there's something that's quite a big part of somebody's life, like crisps, and someone feels very differently about them, then they're going to go, oh no, that's a real shame. I fundamentally think that you must have a terrible personality if you like a different flavour of crisps.
If crisps aren't a big part of your life. And it's a strange thing, because you see it in the like nutrition, let's say like nutrition, I'm not going to use it. I was going to say influencers, I don't like that word, but nutrition bods, nutrition people. If you sort of like, let's say, for example, pick someone at random, let's say Martin McDonald. Okay, right. He's like one of the top guys when people go for nutrition advice and things like that. Let's say, for example, that I didn't quite agree with something he said, or one of his views. Probably, actually,
I pity the fool that doesn't agree.
I was going to say he'd probably shoot me down in flames. But let's say, for example, I didn't agree with something he said. Let's say he had an opinion on training, which is not his, as he admits, it's not his place of specialty. So let's say I disagreed with him on that. It feels like if I said, I don't agree with him on that, then people think, well, I must not like him at all, because I had one minor thing that I didn't quite agree with.
Yeah.
But actually, like, it seems in nutrition, we get so hyped up about every person being completely aligned on everything. It's weird, because if you stepped into a pub and two guys were having a conversation about the same football team, and they disagreed, that's perfectly normal. They're still friends.
Yeah,
Whereas if I say, well, I prefer to train in 8 to 10 reps, oh my God, you're a weirdo, because it's got to be 10 to a 12, and now we don't like each other. So call the whole thing off. It just
internet
really
beef.
Weird. Yeah, I just steer clear of it. I can't be doing with it. I've got nothing to worry about.
I think that's for the best.
I did like your the series of posts that you do where you're it's like diffusing the argument.
Oh yeah,
this is what you're saying, but this is what we mean. Let's all just get along, type of thing.
The translation service. Yeah, because I think actually, for anyone listening that doesn't know what we're talking about, I did this series of posts. I haven't done one for a little while actually. That was the kind of, what people say on the internet, and if actually when you see them say that, you just imagine that actually what they're really saying is this instead. Your life will be a lot easier, and you don't have to be so angry all the time. And I think that actually, in fact, a lot of the time, there's so much clickbait and so much people are trying to get people's attention by saying things that are a bit ridiculous when actually they mean sort of the same thing anyway, and actually we don't really disagree. And there's been plenty of times when somebody's sort of disagreed with what I've said, or I've disagreed with what they've said, but we've had a discussion about it and actually realized that we do actually agree with each other's opinion. We just don't agree with how it was expressed in a 10-second post. And half the time it's because whenever you think up something to post, it's often related to something specific. It's almost often an indirect answer to something that you've recently seen on the internet. And sometimes someone else will have seen something else that they can apply it to, but they'll be thinking about a totally different issue completely. And then they think that's what you're talking about, and you think that's what they're talking about. And actually it's completely different.
And the way that I sort of interpreted your posts in that particular scenario was that it's almost like the attention grabbing type of statement is how people talk when they're on the phone.
Yeah.
And the translation is, if we were sat face to face, what would we actually say to each other?
Yeah.
And it's almost like we would have a human conversation about this thing.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be all internety attention grabbing type statement of,
it's not so black and white.
You're a loser because you don't like protein or whatever. Exactly. Cool. All right. Anyway, back to you again. We're going off on massive tangents, but that's cool.
Back to me.
That's the reason why you're here, to talk about yourself. So, what I wanted to talk about is an interesting thing that I've never actually asked someone, which is when you go through you've gone through your process of multiple false starts. You said it lasted like 6 years, and you've gone on that process of losing weight. Was there a point where you felt like, I've got this now? This is never. I'm never going back because I've nailed it. I've cracked it.
There are multiple points when I've thought that and then been proven wrong, unfortunately. There was a very, very, very long time where I had a real fear of going backwards. And I don't have that fear anymore. I'm no longer frightened that I will end up where I was, but I still have a tendency to revert to a lot of old habits if left to my own devices. And it's still very, very, very hard work, shall we say. And interestingly, I think I was very comfortable continuing to press forward, and I would kind of have these periods of time where I'd loosen the reins a little bit and, meander a bit and then tighten them up again and make some more progress. But I think getting to the point where I got probably as lean as I am ever going to get. I had in my mind that I wanted to see evidence that I had abs. And I had it in my mind that I would want to see that and have it be visible for no more than a day, really, but just to have some evidence in my head that they existed, and then I can move on. And I think that happening, I have found it quite hard to kind of come back from that, in the sense that there wasn't really any further to go. I think if there was still further to go, I'd still be going further. But then once you get to that bit, then you're looking more for kind of equilibrium, I suppose. And you can't just get to equilibrium, I think, when your habits have been formed over so many years and your tastes have been formed over so many years. It takes a certain amount of motivation not to let things slide. And I think it's interesting because I've put on quite a lot of weight, kind of scale weight wise, since I was that lean. But when I kind of look back at pictures of myself at a time when I was this weight, when I was losing weight, I feel I look very different. And I think that's because, obviously I haven't just been on a diet for 6 years. I started training and doing lots of other things as well. So I think that actually, my health has changed, my body composition has changed, my fitness has changed. And I think that it doesn't have to be about weight. And that doesn't have to be kind of the end goal. And even if I'm not at a specific weight, I'm still reaping all the benefits of what I've done, if that makes sense. So I think if I suddenly went back to not being surrounded by supportive people, when I say went back to, I don't mean I wasn't surrounded by supportive people before, but if people didn't know, if I moved to another country and didn't know anybody, and didn't have a gym and didn't have social media accountability, I could very much see myself gradually slipping back into old habits without necessarily even realizing it. So I don't know. I don't think I don't think that I'm at risk going back to where I came from, but it's not always easy to keep it up to the same degree that it was. So, for example, my gym closed this year, and my gym was this incredible social environment where we all trained together. It was like playing together at school, basically. And we all had loads of fun. We all trained. We socialized. We went to classes together. We all kept each other accountable, but it wasn't even accountability. It was just, that was fun. It wasn't a, oh, I've got to go to a gym class this morning. It's like, oh, I'm going to meet up with my mates tomorrow morning before work. Like, how cool is that? You know, not even waiting till after work, meeting up with your mates for a bit before work and all having breakfast together after training and stuff. So it was so easy to do it in that way. And then with that gone, it's been much more difficult, but still doable, I think.
Yeah. So in terms of like a few things you mentioned there, so you mentioned that, you know, you had a goal of trying to get as lean as possible, getting some visible abs on show, and you achieved that. And naturally, as people do when they get to that level of leanness, that's probably not maintainable. So you kind of back off from that a bit. Do you have like specific health and fitness goals now that you use to keep you giving some sort of focus, albeit maybe not an aesthetic goal? Do you still have something to focus in on?
Yeah, right now I'm struggling to think of one, and that's I think why I'm struggling. But I did for a while. Like I didn't, you know, like I did that, you know, I did the photo shoot thing and all that kind of stuff, and I didn't have a particularly big rebound or anything like that. And I carried on training, and I switched over to performance-based goals. So it was my big thing was wanting to start squatting over 100 kilos. It was always something that I was quite scared of and wanted to be able to do. But then I did that, and then I weirdly didn't really like it very much. Like I was so scared every time I was going to the gym because I was like, oh, I might break in half. And so that kind of, I was then thinking of other things I wanted to do, pull-ups, and then I did pull-ups. So I have at every stage had these different ideas. But I think the thing is, I'm not massively motivated by those sorts of achievements because exercise has never been something that came naturally to me or that was a big part of my life. It feels weird to think, oh, I want to, run 5K in a certain amount of time. I wanted to be able to run 5K. I can, or I could. I wanted to do a 10K run. I did a 10K run. Like, there's lots of things that I have done, but those goals don't come as naturally to me as thinking, right, I want to feel comfortable in my clothes, walking down the street, and not have to suck my tummy in when I'm having a photo taken. And those are things that we shouldn't really have to think about. But I think it's always been something that I think when something's eluded you for so long, it feels like a big achievement to be able to do it. And so that's often what you end up focusing on.
Yeah. I mean, like, maybe it's a little bit similar for me. So I was a bit of a fat kid at school and quite overweight. And I went through maybe a similar thing in the sense that I wanted to get like really, really lean, 6-pack, all that sort of stuff, which I did. I achieved that. But right now, I don't have any goals around fitness at all. But for me, fitness, being in the gym, I just love the process of lifting weights. I just really enjoy, as weird as it sounds, the pain of the process. I just like it. It grounds me every day. It's something I look forward to. It's a time when I can put headphones on. I just don't think about work. I don't think about anything other than what I'm doing in that gym at that time. And I don't care about, building muscle and all that sort of stuff. It'll come, it'll happen. I do the right things every day. I eat well, do all the nutrition type stuff. I do what I need to do in the gym. What will be, will be. And it was, I think it's the latest Mark Manson book. I listened to it over the last couple of days. And he mentions something, I'm going to butcher everything he said here and paraphrase it massively, but it was something along the lines of, it's not this kind of trade process that you go through to say, like, I'm not eating this because I expect 3 kilos off the scales at the end of this week. You're eating nutritious food because you want to nourish your body, because that's what you want. You're going to the gym because you want to be fit and healthy over the long term. It's not because you want to trade that effort there for an immediate return of some short-term goal.
And that's the dream. I think that's so important. And that's something that I've realized really only in the last probably couple of months, because like after the gym closed, I really struggled to actually be, consistent in any way with the gym. And I sort of fell out of love a little bit with it. And then I joined up for group coaching. And I have discovered that if I am signed up to a session, whether it's a class or a PT session, I will attend. I will turn up and I will do the work. But if I say I am going to the gym tomorrow at 6 a.m., then I might wake up and go, I'll do it tomorrow. Or I might be meeting someone else to go to the gym, and I might go with someone else, and I'll just be a bit lazy and can't really be bothered. But if I've paid for it, if I've paid for a session, then I will do it. And I found by doing this and by going to group coaching, I would finish a group coaching session and I would feel so great. I would feel so happy that I trained, and I would really enjoy the training itself as well. But it wasn't even a chore to turn up to the gym on those occasions. And I think that's, sometimes it's like, again, I grew up hating PE, hating having to exercise, always it being a massive chore, that it's really difficult when you then start to enjoy it to believe that you are actually enjoying it and not that you just have to do it.
Yeah, it's like almost a bit like what you said earlier about who you identify with and the type of person that you identify with.
Yeah.
You kind of always see yourself a little bit like, well, I'm that kid who didn't like exercise, so I'm just doing this because.
And I'm still the one that whinges at the back. Like, I'm still the one at the back of the exercise class going, ugh, do we really have to do that? But and I don't like. It almost like sometimes I'm like, why are you doing that? You like this? Deal with it.
You're like you're having some sort of inner Fight Club moment.
Yeah,
schizophrenic type deal. Interesting. So you've got probably, well, not you, but there are people out there who it's the first, well, we're recording this on the first Monday of the year. So I imagine people are launching into pretty much that start point that you had many years ago or whenever it was that you started. Have you got any advice for people that are, maybe tried and not been successful in achieving what they wanted to achieve, and how they can best set themselves up this time as someone who's kind of been through that process? What kind of advice could you give?
I think trying things a different way is really important. I think that's sort of what I never really realized, is that I tried to lose weight a lot of times, but each time I tried to do it in exactly the same way. And that's probably why it didn't work. And it was only when I changed things up a little bit that it did work. And I kind of questioned all of the things that I did and did things a bit differently because I got help from somebody else who was advising me how to do it. So I think the key is kind of perseverance in the amount of times you try. Like, it doesn't matter if you fail. It doesn't matter if you have to try several times, because it only really needs to work the one time. And it can be incredibly off-putting to quote unquote fail. So I would try not to look at it as failure, but just look at it as a reason to try things a little bit differently. I think go for small wins, low hanging fruit, all of that kind of stuff, because I think that the biggest motivator is progress. So actually doing well at what you've said you're going to do is almost more important than the end goal. So someone said to me recently, like, actually, this was a really interesting one. Like, I wanted to read more. And they were like, well, instead of just saying you're going to read a book every month, you won't do it. Commit to doing like the tiniest goal of reading. So commit to saying, right, I'm going to listen to an audiobook for 10 minutes a day. Now that sounds so minuscule, but actually it's much more manageable than saying I'm going to read a book every month. Because you probably will just procrastinate and not bother to read the book. Whereas if you say, I'm going to listen to 10 minutes of an audiobook a day, and I have a 2-hour commute or even a 30-minute commute, then that's much more achievable.
And it's like I think it's a James Clear thing from Atomic Habits, where he basically says something similar as, what's the lowest stake that you can commit to, the lowest point of entry.
Yeah, exactly. I love
like
that book.
Like a ridiculous one of, can you do one push-up every morning?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Well, of course I freaking can. And then you obviously, that turns into 5 or 10 or whatever, because one seems so pointless that, it's almost too easy. But it creates that ball rolling. And it's an interesting one, because obviously coaching people this time of year is one where my sort of reinforced message to my clients right now is, you're full of motivation, you're full of inspiration off of Instagram, all of this sort of stuff. And your temptation is to do set yourself about 25 different goals. Whereas if you took all of that motivation, that inspiration, channeled it into one or two key things, you'd make far more progress.
Yeah.
So if people are listening, they're trying to do this, and this, commit to multiple different things, then, you know, I would just really strip that back down to say, well, what is it you're really trying to achieve? And what are the one or two things that are really going to make the difference?
Yeah.
And then just go all in on that and don't worry about the rest. And I think the other interesting thing is that there's no harm in building. You don't have to start off with 25 goals from the get-go. You could have one goal, and then as you start to creep closer to that, add another one, and then add another one, and add another one. Get more goals as you go through the year, rather than start here and finish there by February.
Yeah, I mean, I like again, it's going back to my experience. I lost about 15 kilos in probably sort of 7 or 8 months or something, I think, when I first sort of started to lose weight. And at the end of that, I was like, oh, brilliant, done. You know, cool. That's all. That's it. I'm done. I'm where I want to be. I have to buy a new suit. That's excellent, because my old suit's too big. That's cool. Done. Finish. And then like 2 years later, I've lost another 20 kilos. Not 2 years later, like 4 years later. No, 5 years later. Much more than that. So actually, you know, it's kind of, but it was never, I never set out and said, right, I'm going to lose this many kilos. And that would have just been far too intimidating a goal. So I think sometimes it's not really about having an end point. It's more about engaging in the behaviors that are going to get you a little bit further, and doing a bit of that every day, and the results will come.
Yeah,
It doesn't always have to be that outcome-based goal.
Sure, yeah. Like for me as well. So my original goal way back when was to get lean, six-pack, all that sort of stuff. I weigh a solid 10 or 11 kilos more than I did back then, and I'm carrying a little bit of body fat. The abs are not quite there anymore. They're there a little bit, but you know, by all intents and purposes, if my goal was to get to that specific weight, I've way failed to maintain that. But actually, I maintain a much more reasonable, I don't know if that's the right word, reasonable lifestyle, where it's very inclusive. I don't care about this, that, and the other in terms of, you know, keeping six packs, and I don't fuss about food. To me, that is more of an achievement than being shredded 24/7.
I agree.
People like it. Cool. So let's move on to different topics now. Let's ditch the transformation stuff for a second. And so I want to talk about a little bit the stuff you do on social media, but you also have a podcast. We're not in competition. There's room for us all. There's abundance.
Thank you.
But listeners, be loyal. Listen to them both in equal measures.
Yeah, I agree.
So you've got a podcast that you're very, very successful. And from like my side looking in, you've got nothing to promote, nothing to sell in a nutritional space. You're someone who's really kind of giving all of their time, effort, and not all of their time, but you're giving time, effort, and energy into something like that. So for you, what is the reason for doing all that you do on social media, podcasts, and things like that? What's the driving force behind that?
I would sum it up in one word. That word is lols. I do it for the lols. I genuinely just enjoy it. Like I didn't get into Instagram because I wanted to, like, you know, spread the word of myself or anything like that. It was more because I really liked. I like writing. So I used to love doing Twitter, and then Twitter became really dark and angry and political, and everyone was just furious all the time. And that just sort of coincided with the advent of Instagram, and Instagram was much more lighthearted. It's based on pictures. I love taking pictures of food. It's so weird. I love taking pictures of them, and I love filtering them to make them look really like crazily awesome. And so I just used to do that, like, and just post pictures of food. And then it kind of just got more and more about, I'd see other people doing things like infographics and talking about things, and I often wanted to talk about things. And then that sort of coincided with, again, I used to write blog articles for a couple of different websites, and it sort of, one of them was my gym website. So when the gym shut down, there was nowhere to put those articles. The other one was, I used to do some blogs for Spectator Health. And then like they got a new editor, and they were kind of going in a different direction with their content, and I didn't really sort of manage to submit anything that they wanted to put. Like I think I wrote another couple of blogs that they were like, no thanks. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll
Screw
stop
you.
then. And so I kind of was a bit like, well, now I kind of wanted somewhere to write, and I thought, well, what's stopping me from just writing this stuff on Instagram, like accompanied by a picture rather than anything else? And it's kind of my own place where I can talk about the things that I want to talk about with the people who, will challenge me and will disagree with me and agree with me in equal measure. And it sort of, I find it helps me figure out my opinions to write a bit about them and to reflect on them. And this is, I think, why I'm often accused of sitting on the fence. But I am in that very fortunate position that I'm not using it to promote anything. So I can just kind of say what I want. And I don't have to feel an obligation to post. I don't have to feel an obligation to post about certain things. Like if I want to talk about a song I like, I can talk about it and everyone will totally ignore me. And I kind of almost find that entertaining in a way. Like I'm just going to keep speaking about the song that I really like until someone pays attention to it and listens to it. And nobody ever does. But that's, it's almost like proving to myself that I'm doing it because I want to talk about what I want to talk about, not what necessarily is kind of making me money or getting me engagement or anything like that.
If you want to talk about Belinda Carlisle, you should talk about Belinda Carlisle.
Totally agree, and I will. I don't think I have actually talked very much about Belinda Carlisle on Instagram.
I don't think you have.
I'm sure I'll find a way. Maybe in the next week or so. Maybe there'll be a Belinda Carlisle specific quote.
When I was a kid, she used to be my crush, Belinda Carlisle.
Oh, really? I think I did. I had a Belinda Carlisle album on tape when I was 8. And my mum used to, I don't know why I'm telling you this. My mum used to say that in the video for Circle in the Sand, Belinda Carlisle looked like her childhood best friend. That's my one Belinda Carlisle fact that I can tell
you. There you go. What else can we say?
I know, exactly. We've exhausted the Belinda Carlisle topic now.
My other question on the social media thing was, you've hit the sort of, the social media mogul goal of 10,000 followers now, which, some of us are still trying to climb that lofty ladder.
Oh, God.
Now, so I imagine that because internet, social media is what it is, you get some negative, maybe some random people giving you some negative. How do you deal with that? Because when I receive it, then people are maybe disagreeing with like a nutritional opinion I have from a basis of, okay, I'm a coach trying to provide information. And I still keep posting, I keep pushing out my views and things like that. Whereas I don't know, if I planted myself in your shoes and said, well, I don't have to do this. I'd just be like, I just can't be dealing with all this negativity, eating into my time, and how do you deal with that?
Well,
does it not affect you?
I don't get a lot of negativity, probably because I do tend to sit on the fence a little bit, and I do tend to entertain both sides of an argument, and I don't generally come out with any particularly controversial conclusions, usually. I have had the only time I've had negativity has been, I think, when people have already formed a bit of an opinion about something, or when people have, like, I did have a guy that messaged me for, it was something like he was, and I still am not really sure if this was even a real person or some sort of weird spam thing, but he messaged me to ask me if it was true that the NHS, like, you couldn't make money in the NHS, and he had a place at medical school next year, And people were freaking him out by saying that it's not a good idea to become a doctor and it's not going to make you lots of money. And he's not in it for the money, but he wants to know if it's possible to make lots of money in the NHS.
I think I remember this actually.
Yeah, and I I think the red flag to me was that he ended his message with something like, "Thanks, bro, you've inspired me more than you'll ever know." And so I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting. I don't think I've spoken to him before." So I looked at his Instagram page, and he didn't follow me on Instagram. So I thought, well, this is clearly somebody he's cut and pasted a message that he sent to everybody with doctor in their name on Instagram.
Yeah.
And although I spend this time on Instagram, I have a full-time job and I'm quite a busy person. So I'm quite protective over the amount of time and resources that I give to people. And well, it's not necessarily even that I should, it's that I don't have a choice. I have to protect my own well-being and my own mental health. And if I have had times when I've had an Instagram post that's exploded a little bit, and I have felt this incredible pressure to reply to messages from people that I've never met, that I don't know. And it, I think it's lovely that people are messaging me, and that's really nice. And I would never want to be impolite to anybody. But I have to prioritize like my friends and family. And then I would prioritize the people who are taking time out of their day to be nice to me. And then there are people who don't, who are just asking me for help with something. And also I've got to help quite a lot of people, and I can't, you can't, I think that it sounds like, I really don't want this to come across in an arrogant way at all. But if you've only got a certain number of hours in your day, you have to prioritize how you use those hours. And if I think that somebody's being maybe a bit disingenuous, or also I felt in this situation that they were perhaps prying into kind of my earnings, which I find really uncomfortable to talk about to anybody, let alone total strangers who have never had anything to do with me. So just for all of these different reasons, I didn't feel a huge amount of obligation to spend a lot of time explaining to this person that, there's 100 different careers if you qualify as a doctor. I don't know anything about his interests. The amount of time it's going to take to figure it all out and to help him, I kind of had to cut my losses in a way. So I just said, "Oh, okay." I said, "Oh, if you look on the BMA website, it's got breakdowns of all of the different expected salaries that you would get in all of the different careers in medicine." And I kind of thought, well, that's a reasonable answer to give to somebody. And I got this tirade of abuse that he'd sent the same message to loads of different doctors, and they all answered because they cared. But I just told him to look up a website. So I was a terrible person. And I paraphrase it because he didn't call me a terrible person. He called me a very bad word.
He said he'd see you next Tuesday.
Something like that, yeah. And he said he was definitely never going to support any of my S word again. And he was going to tell everybody about how awful I was. And I was like, well, I struggle because, again, I spend a significant amount of my time trying to understand why people behave the way that they behave and trying to explain it and help people realize that there's different reasons why people will behave in a certain way on things like social media. And I think it's great to try and help people. But I think if you're trying to help people at the expense of your own well-being and it's hurting you to help other people, then I think that's the point where you have to step away. And I don't mind doing that. I think I used to feel a lot worse about doing that. But I think almost his response in that situation was perfectly my justification as to why it was right for me not to have spent time trying to help him.
But generally speaking, it's all positive, yeah?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's mostly, but you don't know what people are thinking, do you? That's the thing. Like, some people say, oh yeah, I really think that's really funny, and some people will call you a nasty word, but then there's all these people in the middle who might just be, just rolling their eyes thinking, oh,
I don't think that's the case in your scenario.
Well,
maybe when you talk about apples and get the ratings of apples wrong, maybe then they do.
Shots fired. But I think the point is that that it shouldn't matter. Like, you definitely shouldn't be getting your validation from those situations. So, I can't believe it when people say nice things to me if I'm not going to believe it when they say awful things to me. So it's better that I don't listen to those things and just go about my business and whatever. Oh, that sounded like such an awful, that's how when like celebrities talk about how they deal with negativity. That's how I just answered that question, and I feel really, really
you are a social media celebrity now.
I'm not, and I feel really yucky about that description that I just gave about not having enough. Can we just remove that whole segment from the podcast?
No, we don't edit.
Really upsetting.
It all stays in. In.
I'm not an awful person.
That's going to be the tagline of the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm not an awful person. So to redeem yourself, what we're going to do is we're going to delve into your specialty, which is the rating. Now, we won't go into 7 out of 7 and all that sort of stuff, because that's maybe a whole different ball game. People can go find out that themselves. So what we're going to do is talk about top threes. Now, the reason why it's not the reason, maybe the catalyst for us to arrange a podcast was a discussion about the top 3 breakfast cereals that are out there. I had an opinion. Mm-hmm. I think you didn't massively disagree with my opinion, but we're going to go through and use Mike as the mediator. So if you ever have this conversation in a pub, social media, online, wherever, this is the definitive list that everyone abides to. There we go. So there's no pressure whatsoever, but we're going to do 3 of these. So your top 3 breakfast cereals of all time and why.
Okay. So this is going to be a relatively controversial answer, but I would remind everybody that these are the cereals that I'm putting in my mouth, not yours. So
I will be the voice of the public and raise objections.
So my top 1 favorite cereal of all time, Special K.
I was going to do a drum roll there, but it didn't deserve it.
I know, it wasn't deserving of a drum roll. So Special K, cornflakes, and Shreddies.
Oh, okay. Why Special K? Why Special K?
I don't really know. So
the
Special
others I can get on board with.
My other piece. So my piece of cereal trivia is that my mum used to give us Special K when we were kids. She used to call it cornflakes. So I grew up thinking Special K was cornflakes. That's anyway, that's beside the point. But I've just always really loved Special K. It's the best. I love it. It's so delicious, and also I think because we never had like sugar on cereal and stuff as kids, so I always find the sweeter cereals like unusual tasting. Like, that's not what cereals tasted for me. But I think the reality is I've never tasted a cereal that I haven't liked.
Okay, it's quite interesting.
Even have you ever tried like economy cornflakes?
It's the same difference, really.
No, economy cornflakes taste completely different to actual cornflakes.
They don't really.
No, they do. No, I don't mean own brand.
When you say like completely, like one tastes like cornflakes, one tastes like beef. That's like completely different.
But I don't mean like supermarket own brand cornflakes. I mean like the economy, like the basic version.
Okay, I don't think I've had basic.
Like low tier cornflakes.
I've never gone Tesco value.
Like, exactly. I don't even recall that they even came in a box. I think they came in a bag, and they taste completely different. But I even like those.
Well, there you go. There you go. Well, it's a happy world when you can't be ever disappointed.
I know.
Whenever you sit down to eat cereal.
I'm never disappointed by cereal. Even muesli. I really like muesli and shredded wheat.
I'm a big fan of muesli. See, shredded wheat and Weetabix are maybe 2 where I'm. So, like, to me, shredded wheat's like eating straw with milk on.
I know.
So I think once I would have to have it soaked in milk for a period of time to let it go soggy, then it'll be
Okay.
fine. You can't be doing the dry stuff. There is
Okay.
a saturation point that you have to hit.
Yeah, but that's true for every cereal. It's just slightly different for each cereal, I think.
Some cereals you like the crunch.
I will always prefer it after it's been submerged for a little while. But there are some that I'm happy to eat like crunchy, like cornflakes, for example, are pretty good crunchy. But I'm quite happy to wait till the second half of the bowl as well when they're.
And I knew someone at school who didn't like milk, so he had all his cereal with water. That's got to be the most disgusting thing I've ever heard in my life.
What are your views on warm milk with cereal?
Okay, probably not my first port of call. I think it would accelerate the mushiness, which I
it
don't
makes
think
it feel like they've already been
thing.
chewed. I think, which I can't.
This is a valid point. Point. Cool. So your second one is a little bit more fitnessy related.
Yep.
Protein bars. Top 3 protein bars, brand and flavor.
Okay, so brand. The top 3 is definitely going to be Carb Killer, Bear Bells, and probably I would say PhD as a brand entirely because I like the smart bars, but I also quite like the diet whey bars as well.
Mm-hmm. I have to say I do.
But then if we're going like, because then there's the platinum protein bars like Protein Pantry and Swolesome Foods. I'm not including those in this because I feel like they're not so accessible. Like you can't get them from the supermarket.
Niche products.
Yeah.
Cool. So what about when you're thinking about like flavors and things like that? What do you go for?
Okay, so for a carb killer, I think it depends what you're going for. Like if you want it to be like a chocolate bar, then I think you can't go wrong with the chocolate chip cookie dough flavor because that just tastes like a proper chocolate bar. And I like Banana Armour a lot. And also the new peanut butter one is good.
White salted peanut,
white chocolate salty peanut.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. And birthday cake. Gosh, I can't believe I nearly forgot birthday cake.
That's horrible.
No, it's not. It's exceptional.
It's not. Because
it is.
It's not because birthday cake isn't
it is. You said
I
was the decider.
But I also said that I was the voice of the public. And I feel like there is a massive wave of people,
Okay. What's your problem with birthday cake?
In 2019, 500,000 people downloaded this podcast. So I feel like the whole wave of the world is now kind of behind my back saying, challenge him on birthday cake flavor.
Okay. I await your challenge.
It's not a flavor.
Well,
it doesn't taste of anything.
It really does.
It doesn't. It's just got this putrid, super sweet, sickly kind of nothing mush taste that isn't anything. It's not like chocolatey. It's not like vanilla-y. It's nothing to it.
It is vanilla-y.
Then the worst bit they've done is the sprinkles on the top.
I agree with you on that.
When you open the packet, they all fucking fall out and they all go everywhere and they never stay on the bar. So
I actually tried to
embed them in the bar a bit better.
I agree with you on that. I tried to start a viral hashtag campaign, #Save Our Sprinkles, when they released that protein bar. But it didn't take off, unfortunately. I don't know why. But yeah, I do agree with you on that. Have you tried the Battle Bites birthday cake flavor?
No.
That's exceptional. That's what a birthday cake bar should be like, and the Protein Pantry one too.
But I also think I'm not a big fan of the name birthday cake because to me, like a birthday cake takes lots of different varieties.
No.
Maybe your common birthday cake is some sort of variation of a Victoria sponge.
But we know what they mean. They mean like a vanilla and raspberry sort of creamy vanilla type flavor.
But that's not what it tastes like. You can't bite into a grenade and say you've got icing, sponge, raspberry jam. You didn't get that as flavor.
I would definitely say that it tastes like cheap birthday cake from Sainsbury's.
I'm saying that's not a winning flavor. Why don't they call it cheap cheap cake that doesn't taste very nice with chocolate or with
Well, no,
sprinkles
because I
that don't
think
stick.
so. So the birthday cake flavor thing is like a very American thing that was started. And I
Damn those
think
Yanks.
I think I might be wrong about this, but I think it started with the Baskin Robbins flavor, America's birthday cake, which I
Okay.
think was like a birthday flavor.
You are
So
so wise.
it's incredible. It's such a lovely thing. But yeah, birthday cake is a flavor that I have very high expectations for because I like cake. So the idea of a cake flavored something is really exciting to me, but it is frequently done very, very, very badly. But I do like the carb killer birthday cake flavor.
All right. But that kind of leads us into the third and final one, because we're going to talk like the top 3 low calorie ice creams. Now, not to influence you here, but Halo Top birthday cake flavor is the worst.
It's not the
flavor you could
worst, actually.
possibly have.
It's one of the most inferior, but it's not the worst.
It's just flavored ice.
Have you tried the Halo Top toasted coconut dairy-free flavor?
No.
Yeah, then try that.
Oh, is that bad?
Try that and come back to me.
I don't want to waste £5.
Yeah, no, fair enough. That's fair enough.
Top 3 low calorie ice creams.
Okay, the Breyer's salted caramel cake.
It's a good choice. I like that.
I like a Halo Top red velvet.
That's a good choice. I like that.
And for my third, I'm going to go on well, actually, so if I was if we're talking really low calorie, then this is what I'm going to go for. But I also do really like the Euphoria Ben & Jerry's are the actual best ones, but they are double the calories of the Breyers and the Halo Top. So, and there's the white chocolate and raspberry Graham's one from Lidl. That's exceptional as well. But I just want to let people know that Waitrose do a Belgian chocolate frozen yogurt that predates any of the Halo Top things, and I think is about 400 calories per tub, and is I think £2 or £2.99 or something, £2.99 at full price, and is creamy and chocolatey and delicious, but it was not particularly marketed as a low calorie product. And I also will get crucified if I don't credit Aaron Davies of Davies Training on Instagram for the original discovery of that ice cream, because I don't know, it is very, very good.
So my favorite low calorie ice cream is Jude's salted caramel.
Oh yeah, that is really good as well.
I would literally have that quite happily over many other full calorie ice creams.
Yeah.
The only thing it lacks is
texture.
Like little bits of something.
Yeah. Well, that's why the Breyer salted caramel cake is so excellent, because it has actually got cakey chunks.
Cakey chunks. Oh my God, you have your cakey chunks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the other thing that you switched me on to, if we're talking like, is it Miss Molly, the Arctic roll thing?
Oh yeah. That was a total accident as well.
That's 99p.
I know. It's ridiculous. It's so excellent as well. I never thought I would be able to eat half an Arctic roll. I always thought I would just end up eating the whole thing.
I just eat the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, the half of it is like the same calories as a Halo Top, I think.
Yeah. I think it's a bit less. So yeah, that's why I figured I might as well go all in on the whole thing.
Exactly.
It's only a quid. It's like 5 of these.
Exactly. And it's ironic because the other Miss Molly stuff is not very nice. Like they do like cheesecakes and stuff, which are not very nice.
It kind of reminded me of desserts my mum would dish up. A little bit, a little bit of Arctic
school
roll
dessert as well.
Here you go.
Yeah.
All awesome. Cool. So we're about to wrap up. So final question for you then, Mike, is what's on the agenda for you 2020, work-wise, podcast-wise, social media-wise, anything you want to tell us about what's going on in your world for 2020?
Work-wise is a bit boring, isn't it? I'm not going to tell people. I'll probably go to work most days.
Awesome.
And then, yeah, thanks. So I've got more into kind of the education side in general practice as well. So I've started to do more teaching. So a bit more of that, bit more of maybe a few talks. That's kind of my goal, to do a bit more bit more talking, and a bit more writing, and a bit more reading, and a bit more listening.
All the senses.
Yeah, well, not all of them, but yeah, I think just a bit more of the same, and a bit more consistency when it comes to kind of training and nutrition and all that kind of stuff. A bit more. I feel like I've had a bit of a, I worked really hard for a really long time, and then I'd sort of had enough of working hard, and I thought, actually, I need to take my foot off the brakes a little bit, and I feel like I've done that now, and now I want to do more stuff.
Sounds good. And to wrap up is, before we jumped on, you were wondering where Iron Paradise Fitness as a name
and I have waited long to find out. So now I'm very excited.
You're very excited about a very mediocre story.
I'll be in charge of that.
So when I was thinking about starting a fitness business, I just loved The Rock. The Rock was like probably still is my hero. I know he takes steroids and he's massive and he's jacked and all that sort of stuff, but I think he's just a very good human being. So he did all of these little videos and things like that, and he referred to the gym as the Iron Paradise, the place where he went to lift weights, and he felt like that was his time alone where he could enjoy himself. It was his time away from the hectic life of celebrity and all that sort of stuff, and it just kept him very grounded. So he said, this environment of iron, this is my paradise, this is my Iron Paradise. So then I thought, if he's coining this phrase, Iron Paradise, if I called my business Iron Paradise Fitness, when people go to Google Iron Paradise, there I am waiting for you. Albeit you didn't Google anything related to what my business is actually about, and therefore probably not going to click on it. This is something I didn't think about when I actually figured I'd call it that. And then everybody then started to say, what the hell does that mean? What does that mean? So now I've got to explain it every single time. And it probably wasn't the greatest choice of company names. A guy who taught me a training course, he thought it was some sort of weird bondage thing.
Right. Okay.
So
that's an avenue to go down, perhaps in the future. If
I feel we have spin-off companies.
You need to
available.
branch out. Yeah, exactly.
But I kind of then, when I actually, after I'd named it, and I thought, okay, right now, let's actually think about how to run a business properly. Let's think about this. It kind of then kind of morphed into, when I started again, it was appealing more to those guys that were jacked and all that sort of stuff. So The Rock, Iron Paradise, Iron Ra. And then obviously I drifted away from that. And then I still wanted to keep it the name because, I've not got a super huge business or anything like that, but people knew what it was. And so I kind of morphed it into this thing that people shouldn't be intimidated about going to the gym. They shouldn't be, have to have this fear. So everybody should feel like they can find this sense of enjoyment in an environment that maybe feel quite intimidating. So the gym, where you should be able to find this nice, not to say tranquil, but enjoyment in this environment, and that should be open to everybody. And so that's why I stuck with it. So
I like it. I don't think that's a mediocre story.
There we go. What's above mediocre? Marginally above average.
Excellent. I like it.
There we go. Cool. Awesome. So, Mike, thanks very much for being on the show. Last thing is, obviously, people are now going to be flooding to your social media, but they need to know where to go. So let's hit them with it. Where should they go?
If they so wish, they should go to Dr. Mike II, which is, again, quite a silly name. DRMIKETHE2ND. Again, you can't really say it without having to spell it out, because there's so many different ways that you could have written out. So again, we live and we learn, don't we, when it comes to naming things. But
we live, we learn, we can't change it.
Exactly.
There we go. Awesome. So, Mike, thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem at all.